If you think it's time to take a hammer to your bathroom scale and rip up the diet rulebook, well, welcome to Body Kindness. Hi, everyone. It's Rebecca Scritchfield, author of Body Kindness and host for this podcast. I'm a health at every size dietitian, a certified exercise physiologist, a former chronic dieter, and mom to 2 girls. Join me as I talk to guests about what it means to be good to ourselves and create a better life where well-being matters, not weight. Through these conversations, we'll reveal the challenging and surprising ways our culture keeps us searching for our worth and our appearance. So let's create a new view of health that's inclusive and built on compassion and respect for all bodies. Let's shake things up and let's change the game. Hey listeners, would you like to help advance research on body image healing? I'm co-investigator of a new study with Dr. Jennifer Webb, director of the Integrative Positive Psychology Research Lab in Mindfulness, Body Acceptance, Culture, and Health at UNC Charlotte. And we're looking for Body Kindness readers living in the U.S. to participate in a survey. If you're a woman who's currently pregnant or with at least 1 child under 5, and you are reading or have recently read Body Kindness, we would love to hear from you. Visit bodykindnessbook.com/research to learn more. Those who complete the survey will be eligible to receive access to an exclusive web-based body kindness training with downloadable resources for pregnant and postpartum women developed by me. Please help us spread the word about the research study by sharing the link on social media. That's bodykindnessbook.com/research. And if you haven't yet read Body Kindness, there are a limited number of free ebook copies available. Visit bodykindnessbook.com/research. If you have any questions, please email me, Rebecca@bodykindnessbook.com.
Like 93% of those women in that study who showed signs of disordered eating were not screened, asked questions. Their symptoms were not identified by their medical provider. And that's during pregnancy. So during pregnancy, if we actually see in the literature, surprisingly, we see an overall somewhat decrease in symptoms. Not all of the research says that, but we see, and I think a lot of us can think of clients that we've spoken with where they're telling us their stories and they're like, my eating disorder was XYZ, and then I got pregnant and I totally I stopped, engaging in compensatory behaviors or whatever it was while I was pregnant. And then during postpartum, it came back.
That was Lindsay Stenovec. She's the founder of The Nurtured Mama, a body-positive online community for moms and moms-to-be, and also the owner of Nutrition Instincts. That's a San Diego-based nutrition private practice. Lindsay is a mother, speaker, educator, and podcast host for The Nurtured Mama, and she's the creator of Eat, Be, Nurture, an online program that helps mamas eat with joy, live in the moment, and nurture their inner power. So as a registered dietitian with almost 10 years of professional experience in eating disorders, intuitive eating, maternal wellness, and family feeding, she really works to bridge the gap between the motherhood experience and dysfunctional eating and body dissatisfaction. Lindsay lives in sunny San Diego with her husband and 2 sons, ages 3 and 3 months. I'm so excited to bring you guys this conversation with Lindsay. We talk about what it's like going from 0 kids to 1 and how utterly unprepared we were. And Lindsay shares a bit about her baby blues and her postpartum depression that took 14 months to diagnose. We talk a little bit about perinatal depression and which is often missed in the research. And we discuss the pervasiveness of eating disorders and disordered eating in pregnancy and postpartum, and how doctors can often miss it. We talked about the increase of binge eating disorder in pregnancy, self-compassion, and how to flex that mindfulness muscle and accept whatever is happening in the present moment. I really hope, whether or not you have kids or or love someone who is on that journey, I hope that you will share this podcast, get something beneficial out of it as we evolve in life and evolve in our relationships with our bodies. This is a conversation that is really important to start having and keep having throughout the rest of our lives. And I hope that if you're in this boat with us, that you will consider completing the Body Kindness this research study survey, which you heard about at the beginning. And just one more time, it's bodykindnessbook.com/research. We are still going strong on collecting those survey respondents. We need to hear from hundreds of women. And if that's you, great. If that's someone you know, please share that link, share the podcast episode, and you'll be doing your friend a favor today. So you're getting as much sleep as I am with a 2.5-year-old daughter.
Yep. My son's never been a star sleeper, but that's okay. We've learned how to go to bed early and embrace morning snuggles, which actually I love.
Yeah. Isla, my younger, well, she's my younger one, but she's 2.5. She still nurses a little bit. So usually around midnight or 3 a.m, at some point she comes in, she's like, Mama. And I know, she even, I mean, it's kind of funny. She'll she'll say, Mama, boo boo. She'll point which one she wants. So yeah, needless to say, my sleep is interrupted still a little bit, but we do it because we love being moms, don't we?
I know that it's always how we wrap up the like little mini sessions of like, oh, it's so hard and this and that, and then we're like, but it's so worth it. They're so great.
Yeah. It really is interesting, like I don't know. And becoming a mom is like, wait a minute, where's my handbook? And I remember feeling totally like slighted. Like, why did none of my friends who were parents warn me about how hard it was going to be? It was like, you jerks.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we just can't, I don't know. There's not enough. It's almost like if we admit that something's hard, or if we admit we don't like something, that means that we hate our kids or something really weird. And it's like, let's just be real. It is a transition, and it is not easy.
No, it really isn't. I'll never forget. I mean, I spent so much time thinking about like preparing for the childbirth and going to the classes. And I remember thinking like, oh, I can, like, I'm not worried about changing a diaper. Like, I thought of parenting classes as just like learning how to change a diaper, which actually a lot of them just cover that sort of thing. And, I'll just never forget that feeling of like meeting with my doctor every single week leading up to the childbirth, like having this insane, body mind experience of childbirth. And then they're basically like, okay, like, we'll see you later. We'll see you in 6 weeks. Good luck, And I'm like, wait, what? Like, you don't want to make sure, like, you were there, right? You don't want to make sure, like, every day things are going okay. And like, what am I supposed to do with this baby? Like, it was just like this total reality moment of just, oh my goodness, what was I thinking? Like, that part's over. And I did nothing besides prepare his room to think about
with the perfect decorations.
Oh yeah, that they don't even use. Like they're, he was sleeping in my room for how long? They didn't even use it. By the time he knew what was going on in the room, we had remodeled it, kind of to be like a little kid room.
Oh, well, and it's so funny because I remember when I was finishing up my registry, and my best friend, and I love her to pieces, but it's hilarious. She has no kids, and she's like, "Oh, you need this butt wipe warmer," and so of course I got it, and I'm like, yeah, the last thing that I needed as a new mom was to make sure that my baby's butt was warm when I wiped it.
The things we do that we think are preparing us. And yeah, we just we're just really left in the dust from a cultural perspective and a medical community perspective, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And I don't know. I mean, and I guess that's it's not like I had any intentions to be like, I'm going to start out with a pessimistic approach, but it's not even pessimistic as much just like, I just feel that I feel like with honesty, there's truth, and with truth, there's healing. And it's like, that's part of the problem by not showing the ugly, and bad along with the good, then we just create more isolation and more suffering. And that helps no mom,
Yeah. Absolutely. It's amazing when you start sharing your stories with other moms, how quickly people start to say, oh, that's exactly how I felt, or I know someone who felt exactly that same way. And it's amazing how much that little moment of telling that story and finding another person who felt the same way, how much that lifts any guilt you might have been holding on to. I mean, it doesn't always take care of everything you're feeling, but it can take, it can take the edge off of any guilt you might have been carrying along with that, or any, little bits of isolation that you're feeling with it. So yeah, I think telling our stories is so, so powerful. And I think for, our mothers and grandmothers, and, they grew up in worlds where you really didn't talk about the bad, like you didn't talk about the parts that were hard. And we live in a world where we have this internet, where we can connect and hear stories. So I think we can use it for good. I mean, of course, there's, social media has lots of pros and cons, but I do feel like the connectedness of our world, even if we can't get out of our homes, we could use it in that way to be a really powerful connector and a storyteller. That's how I see it, at least.
Yeah, no, I could not agree with you more. I mean, my family is kind of scattered throughout the country, and even, my in-laws are like 4 hours away. And yeah, you realize, I mean, that saying, it takes a village, like they weren't joking with that. Mm-hmm. And so it is, I wish my scenario was different, but it was very much a scenario of, husband, wife working and going to keep working kind of throughout the whole process. And and then just with the cost of childcare and it, luckily, I guess Lean In was already out, and I got a lot from it, but one of the lines I remember her saying, like, even if all your money goes to childcare, you're still staying in a workforce and still contributing to something. And then, you have something to go to as your kids get older and everything like that. But yeah, there's just, it is really, I mean, it's a major source of stress even, but like what's marketed, the joy is what's always marketed, and there is joy, but it's like, there's also stress.
Yeah. And so much change. Mm-hmm. Even the feeling of joy, like even for me, the degree at which I was feeling emotion, whether it be positive or negative, became very overwhelming for me. I wasn't, and I don't know that you can actually prepare for that, but you can talk about it, just that feeling of so much joy. I remember, going through those early, like, I guess you would call it in the early stages, baby blues, of like just starting to cry. I actually did have postpartum depression and anxiety, but I didn't know it at the time. And it was delayed. Anyways, we'll talk about that. But I remember just starting to cry, and my husband's like, "What's wrong?" And we were like maybe 3 or 4 days postpartum. And I was like, I'm just so happy and like also so scared. Like I feel both emotions at the same time in such an overwhelming way. And I just couldn't process it, or I was trying to process it probably with those tears, but it was just so overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I definitely want to get into that pretty, quickly here on the show, but let's just at least kind of give listeners an idea about why you started the subspecialty for wellness moms and what you're currently doing with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have, as you said in the intro, I have a private practice in San Diego, and it specializes primarily in eating disorders. We do have male clients, but most of our clients are female, and probably about 80% of them happen to be mothers. So I always worked that into the treatment in terms of using like child feeding as, one area in their recovery process, or looking at things through the lens of motherhood. And I also have always had just like a genuine interest in, maternal and family nutrition from the beginning when I was in school and training, and have usually had a hand in that, whether it be counseling women with gestational diabetes or like working for Head Start or whatever. So I always wanted to integrate that more into my practice. But I didn't really know how, besides just basically, having women come in and me kind of like giving them a Q&A session. until I realized that the skill set that we all have in the eating disorder and disordered eating space is a skill set that specifically moms need, even if they're not suffering from an eating disorder. As we both know, a lot of the disordered eating that goes on just blends in with the background. And I had a sense that it was a pretty risky time during pregnancy and postpartum. When I went through my own pregnancy and postpartum experience, I didn't necessarily suffer from suffer from any disordered eating. Certainly my life was affected my eating. I really believe that being an intuitive eater and having a really healthy relationship with food really protected me during that time, during all the struggles that I had during postpartum from developing any disordered eating. Because I do have a history of, dieting back in college and things like that. But I had postpartum depression and anxiety that did not get diagnosed until my son was 14 months old. So it was something that sort of started low and slow and just got kind of worse and worse and worse. And it was just crazy. It was a crazy time for me. It was really tough. And throughout that experience, I had, again, kind of had these ideas of how to bring this mom piece into my practice, but I'd only seen it starting and stopping with pregnancy. And once I went through the postpartum experience, I was like, oh no, like we need help over here. Like pregnancy, yes, but like pregnancy leads to postpartum and like we all need help at this point. And so I thought, well, I'm going to take my skill set and I'm going to apply it to fill one of these gaps, because there's so many gaps from, fertility to pregnancy to postpartum. There's so many gaps in the medical care that we receive, and the mental health care that we receive. And so I launched the Nurtured Mama program on Mother's Day weekend of 2015. And it just had started like a little, Facebook group, and slowly has grown. And we're going to be launching different programs and webinars and things like that moms can access from the comfort of their own homes to get support with disordered eating, body image, just, we've been doing our book club. We've been reading Body Kindness this month.
Yay.
And loving it, loving it. It's such a beautiful book from a message perspective and a visual perspective. Like you just did such a good job with piecing all of that together, and we're loving it. So.
Well, thank you so much. I just was having some of my own difficulty adjusting to becoming a mom of two, and my inner critic was going crazy, and my husband noticed. And, long story short, he's like, you're the one who helps people. He's like, I don't know how to help you, but I know you are not you. And I want to be here for you. I hope you figure it out. And it was like that night where I made basically the Body Kindness manifesto. And it was just like this list of things that mattered. And as soon as I saw be kind to your body, that just jumped out to me. I was like, that's exactly right. Like no matter what I do, it's not good enough. I'm body bashing again more. Like I am just not adjusting at all to, who I am as a woman, wife, mom, entrepreneur, label, like, and it was just overwhelm. I mean, I got to tell you, I was never diagnosed with any kind of postpartum depression. I don't identify that was an issue, but I certainly felt anxiety and a lack of identity. And while I did not mean to just target moms in the transition of motherhood, and that's not presenting in the title or anything at all. I literally was going through difficulties and writing that for me first. And I'm just grateful it's there to help others. And you're the first person I've had on the show that works directly with moms kind of in that space where I was when I wrote Body Kindness. So I'm just personally interested to see how it's resonating with the women you're working with.
Oh, what a powerful story. I remember you saying in an email, like, I'm writing this for me first,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's amazing. I can totally relate to that, the block that you experienced when you were struggling, first of all, and like kind of figuring out, having to kind of reroute and figure out what this was going to mean to you and how life was going to like shape that masterpiece of a book. So amazing. And I think that, with motherhood, like there's so many challenges that we do go through, and it's amazing when you come out on the other side, so to speak, what you can look back and learn from it. I think having like noticing, being able to, being a practitioner, like you said, in this field, and being able to be honest about the struggles that we're having with it, that it's not this like linear, one day you decide that you are going to make peace with food in your body and like everything just becomes so easy and fine and you never question it or never have things come up, is, you know, it's like a dangerous message. You know, I think it's so powerful for us to be able to be honest about that. Sorry, the dangerous message would be to suggest that was not the case, you know. And I think it's so powerful for clients that we're working with, not necessarily to always weave it into the individual session, but for them to know that practitioners who are doing this work aren't just, you know, not having a negative body image thought ever come up for them, or maybe going through postpartum. You know, sometimes I'll tell my clients to come back in to see me who I've maybe worked with before. Like maybe they've had an eating disorder before, kind of went into remission. They come back in the postpartum time and they're so mad at themselves. They're like, why? Like, why is this back? Like, I felt so good during my pregnancy. I was in remission for X amount of months or years before my pregnancy. And I'm so mad at myself. And I'm like, hey, like your hormones have changed. You're going through an enormous identity shift in your life. This is not your fault that these thoughts are coming up. And look where you are. Like, you're getting help and support. You're taking care of yourself. You're being, you know, kind to your body and kind to yourself right now and doing what you need to do to get yourself through it. It's not your fault that these things have just started coming up again, because it's just such a, you know, just like postpartum depression or anxiety, it's not your fault if it happens to you. And all you can do is, you know, do your best to take care of yourself and and sort of outsource that support, ask for help.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, yeah, we're bottom line is we're real people too. And right. I'm going to mess up the quote, but it's got to be like the Dalai Lama, something about the definition of suffering, or to suffer together is like compassion, I think. Oh, see, now I'm going to have to search that real time so I get it right. But it basically means none of us are alone.
Right.
To suffer together. I love my little. Yes. Okay. See, my brain is working. Compassion literally means to suffer together. Among emotion researchers, it is defined as the feeling that arises when you are confronted with another's suffering and feel motivated to relieve that suffering. Gosh, that's like nutrition, eating disorder counseling, body image counseling. Yeah. Like, that's why we do what we do. We are suffering right along with them. High compassion score. Compassion is not the same as empathy or altruism, though the concepts are related. So, yes.
Love it.
Yes. Love it. Okay. So let's talk more about some of the other stuff that you're doing. So you're working on an article about eating disorders in pregnancy. What has the research taught you?
One of the main take homes is there's a major screening problem. So research kind of obviously is mixed in terms of incidence, but anywhere from, you know, I've seen research articles that range from like 5 to 7% up to that high of women who are pregnant are suffering from eating disorders. But what was one study really stood out to me, it was a study in 2012 that revealed that 27% of subjects that were evaluated in this cohort displayed disordered eating symptoms and psychological and behavioral traits associated with eating disorders during pregnancy. So 27% of the women had some sort of disordered eating symptoms or psychological or behavioral traits that would be associated with eating disorders while they were pregnant. Out of that group, 93.3% of those women were not identified by their medical provider, and they did not share that information with their medical provider. Like 93% of those women in that study who showed signs of disordered eating were not screened, asked questions. Their symptoms were not identified by their medical provider. And that's during pregnancy. So during pregnancy, if we actually see in the literature, surprisingly, we see an overall like somewhat decrease in symptoms. Not all of the research says that, but we see, and I think a lot of us can think of clients that we've spoken with where they're telling us their stories and they're like, my eating disorder was XYZ, and then I got pregnant and I totally like, you know, I stopped, you know, engaging in compensatory behaviors or whatever it was while I was pregnant. And then during postpartum, it came back. I know I can always like think of clients like that as they're telling their stories. With that said, there are still obviously a lot of women suffering from eating disorders, and their symptoms, even if they decrease, are obviously still higher than that of women who are pregnant and don't have eating disorders. But to know that that many women are being missed during pregnancy, one tells me probably those women also aren't in treatment, although I have had plenty of clients who are in treatment who do not tell their doctors. But also they're getting into the postpartum period, and that's the riskiest time during the perinatal period for an eating disorder to either be, it could be for relapse, for triggering, or for just like disordered eating, subclinical, that wouldn't be diagnosed as an eating disorder, disordered eating. So that just blows my mind. Yeah, blows my mind. There's a lot more, but
I can't believe that. Yeah, that's kind of unbelievable, really. I mean, and at a time when you need to rebuild and repair and nourishment and energy and all these things, it's kind of like, I mean, we always need a good well-being and nourishment, right? But especially after the stress and trauma of pregnancy and childbirth, we need, a good, healthy, air quotes around healthy eating patterns, Wow.
Yeah.
Oh
and you
gosh.
think about like the messages postpartum in terms of like, get back to your pre-baby body weight, lose the weight, both from like, just, trainers, nutrition professionals, and even dietitians. Sometimes I'll communicate it to dietitians. They'll say, okay, if you were to have a patient with a wound, what would you be doing to assess that client's needs? And they're like, oh, I'd always up the needs, I'd be multiplying by X factor or whatever. And it's like, that's how we need to be thinking about pregnancy. This is not a time to recommend, losing weight, although, of course, you and I will totally agree that we never use that recommendation. But if you're talking to dietitians who are not in the body positive field, it's like, we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't say, hey, wound healer, like this is wound healer. Hey, person who has a wound, this is a good time to also, go on a diet. Like, no, you need to increase your needs. You need to like be resting. You need to let yourself heal. Like that's the last thing you need to be worrying about. But we don't give that message to moms, not to mention all the cultural expectations of like visitors and all that. We won't even get into that. But yeah, it's lots of gaps.
What's so interesting is I'm thinking back to being pregnant with my first daughter. And the first time I even heard this, and it was like a revelation. It was from my bald, male, childless, unwed hairdresser. And I love him. He has since changed careers and I have somebody else, but he literally did my hair for at least 15 years. And I was pregnant and I didn't even make a body comment. I don't know the context of how it came out, but diet culture. But, he had, it was pretty far along in pregnancy. It was, oh, you're glowing. That kind of, you look great, totally fine. And I don't know how I did not say, oh, I've gained. There was none of that negative talk at all. But somehow the comment was made, or I think he might have been asking me like, was I going to do more work with pregnant women or, something along those lines. But he basically said, yeah, 9 months on, 9 months off. And it was funny because I was just like, oh yeah, duh, like 9 whole months. So it was like, if there was this part of me, that was nervous about, that cultural pressure of getting pre-baby body back and all that. It literally was this like, it should not be a revelation, but it was just a rational comment. And he's not from America. He's from France actually, and has a sister who has had multiple kids. And so I don't know even I didn't even ask him where that came from, but it is true, right? It is what we see is the headline is how fast that celebrity got their pre-pregnancy body back. We are like dehumanized into these robots or something, and even that like breathing room of, oh yeah, this was a 9-month process, actually a little bit longer if you technically it's a 10-month pregnancy and then pre-conception care, but so there's that. And then the other comment I want to make about that, and I don't know who said this to me, but I know for sure it came through, I had a lot of different doctors because I gave birth at a teaching hospital. So it was just like, there'd be a million students and interns looking at, up in there or whatever was going on. But it was like, oh, you're nursing. Oh, the baby weight's going to fall right off of you. And I mean, first of all, I was just like, I just, all body comments make me feel uncomfortable. But actually, that was not my experience at all. And I wasn't like, I was happy to be a successful nurser because I actually struggled with number one. Number two, as we know, she's still, reaching for it. But there was struggle with the first one. And I'm a big proponent of feed the baby, mother's choice. It doesn't matter, let's all support each other. But I was interested in nursing and I had some difficulty and we worked through it with lactation consulting. But this whole idea of that, whether it's congratulations, you're nursing and the bonus prize you're going to get is fast weight loss. That just wasn't true for me. And I just thought, and I'm pretty adapted, I guess, to diet culture noise at this point. And I just felt so much pain for women who were hearing that message or expecting that or just whatever. And I'm like, why does this transition have to be about reclaiming that former version of ourselves? Why can't we just let our bodies heal the way they're going to heal, be the way they're going to be, and love them no matter what?
So many reasons, right? I know. And I've had clients come in with the same experience of like, my mother-in-law said, oh, breastfeeding, you're going to be back to your baby weight at X, Y, and Z months. And they're like, but that's not happening. Or my weight's been staying the same or whatever it is. And it's like, it really frustrates me. I like to reframe that and say like the more scientifically accurate comment would be breastfeeding helps you heal. It like literally helps your uterus, shrink. It helps your body heal. But this whole idea, and I think that lactation consultants, because of our dieting culture, like to use it as like hey, like that's your bonus is you get to lose this baby weight and that must be so important to you. But really like, when you look at the literature, I mean, it's not that big of a difference in terms of women who have breastfed and women who haven't breastfed at certain markers postpartum. And so it's confusing for women like that don't experience that and are expecting to experience that. Or it's an unfortunate, one of the many unfortunate messages that we're given. Because if, you choose to breastfeed, great. If you don't, great. Either way, I hope it's what you want and is working well for you and for the reasons of feeding your child and connecting with your baby through feeding. So it's interesting that that's always like the assumption. Or I have a friend who got a personal trainer. Her daughter is, I think like 8 months now. She just wanted someone to come over and like teach her new things and help her get stronger and stuff. And the person kept bringing up like, oh, this will really help with this body part, like, oh, this will really help you lose that there. And she just kept, it just was really off-putting to her because she was like, I never once said I'm hiring her to help me do that or lose weight or anything. And this is really distracting from like me getting an enjoyable workout in, like just because I'm a postpartum mom or a woman, like, why are you just assuming this is why I brought you, like I hired you?
Wow. Well, we could have a whole conversation, and I need to bring a trainer on actually, but just about the whole sickness that is in the fitness industry, and body focus. And it is just just as diseased as the nutrition world is, what else about the research and body image that you might have not shared yet?
So one thing I do want to mention that's important that I didn't mention just a second ago is that binge eating disorder is the only disorder that we see consistently increase in incidence during pregnancy and also in postpartum. So I think that's just important for any practitioners listening to know. I think it's important for any, women in their baby making years to know that. And so that is something that, I think it's important to communicate in terms of body image. So first of all, we can say women with body image issues are definitely at a higher risk for perinatal depression. So we hear a lot about postpartum depression, but there's actually a significant amount of moms who also experience pregnancy depression. And women with body image issues are at a higher risk. And actually, there's some research that shows that up to 50%, so like 50% of women with eating disorders will have postpartum depression. So like the risk for someone with an eating disorder is extremely high. So anyone working with people with eating disorders, dietitian or otherwise, even though postpartum depression isn't something we treat as dietitians, I'm always like, if I hear anything from any of my postpartum moms that I work with, I will communicate that really quickly to the therapist. If maybe we're just getting that working relationship going and they haven't met as much with the therapist or whatever that might be. But I think that's really significant. Also, mother's body dissatisfaction appears to increase significantly from 0 to 9 months. I can personally relate to that. I remember in the beginning, I was just like, I think I was just shell shocked. And I was just like in awe of my body. I was just like, holy crap. Like, can I say that on here?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
you have this baby and like your body looks one way and then all of a sudden looks another way. And then it's just like changing every single day in those early weeks and months in one way or another. And you're just like, whoa, this is nuts. But as the months go on, you're realizing there is a new reality, I think, both in your personal life and in your cognitive, emotional state and in your physical body. And I think all of that's relevant. I think it's totally normal, actually. One thing I've been saying in my group a lot, I think it's actually common and normal for us to feel a little bit out of whack with that change and to feel a little bit strange about it. But it's the way our culture talks about it that I think shifts it into this like isolating spiral of negative, body image that gets worse and worse and worse, or has continued from other issues that we've had pre-pregnancy and postpartum. But yeah, that it kind of increases over time. The 6-week mark in particular, of course, that's just like markers in research, but the 6-week mark in particular seems to be like a time to make sure we're checking in. I saw a couple studies that looked at like the 6-month period and the 9-month period, but that was kind of the general idea or the trend is that it tends to worsen over time. Yeah.
I'm going to make an assumption that has to do with the weight gain and a fear of what the post-baby body is going to look like. So like that's fat phobia. Would you agree?
I should say I'm sorry, 1 to 9 months postpartum, it worsens.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that was my brain fart.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay, but still, so I guess does that still hold true then? So it's like you are postpartum and that body's not bouncing back like you wanted it to, or like everyone said you would, and you're having difficulty adjusting to whatever your new normal is in routine or body or anything like that. I mean, I don't know if the discussions are coming out that I'm just thinking about from a cultural standpoint, what, we're certainly not a culture that's like, I can't wait to weigh an extra however many pounds after my first baby.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a totally fair assumption that, again, I think in kind of the same idea. I mean, we want to, I will say like, hey, postpartum healing and body changes. And yes, part of that will probably include some level of loss of weight, like you're birthing a placenta and a baby and losing water weight and stuff like that. And of course, your body's healing and stuff. But the expectation isn't necessarily going to align with the reality. And your genetics are going to play a huge part in that. And I think also as more and more time goes on, I think we are not just easing into the reality of our changed physical bodies, but the reality of our changed lives. Like you just start to realize, oh, like my life really, like this is my new life. This is my new identity. There's so many great things that come with that, but it's scary too. And so I think it's just, to me, it's kind of just mirrors like the overall identity transition. There's a woman therapist that I spoke with on eating disorders and pregnancy. And her name's Dr. Linda Shanti. And she's really a wonderful, just lovely person. And she talks a lot about the parallels of recovery, like eating disorder recovery and the motherhood identity. And she just talks a lot about the transition of them into the motherhood identity and how it affects body image and eating. And it's super interesting to listen to her But there's, we are forever changed, mind, body, spirit. So even if, I always say, even if our bodies do, quote, go back, even if we look the same as we did before pregnancy, we're not the same. But I can certainly understand the draw for us to want to go back if we're having trouble adjusting to our identity. And I think that manifests in a physical way, because as we've learned in our diet culture, that's the easy thing to change. That's what we're told. Like, you feel uncomfortable, well, change it. So I think that's just like the easy default. I think it just feels
it's the
familiar.
easy thing to pick on, something else in life actually is what's wrong, but I can blame it on my body or use a body concern as a reason as a focus. I mean, I could see that. Yeah. So I'm at, something happened like on the eve of turning 40 for me. It's like, and I don't know, or maybe this has just been, through the process of writing Body Kindness and just, 10 years of counseling clients with body image issues and, getting them off diets or turning 40 or the moon or who knows what. But there was I remember, oh my gosh, I suddenly don't give a rat's ass about what so many people think or say, and maybe it's just being like involved in like fat positivity and health at every size, or I don't know, but whatever it is, I'm grateful for it. But literally, it's like this idea of like, I am very much in my element of meeting people where they're at and helping them along their body kindness journey. It's my favorite thing to do in life, professionally, I guess. But it's like for me and my daily struggle, it's like, I'm not saying it, it's a human nature. It's not, there's never a compare and despair, but like if something happens, I can see it right away. I could call it out. I could be like, oh, that is a huge waste of time. It's like my caregiver is like strong. Like she does not play. She is really strong and just can kind of like help me, worry about those things, like things that used to bother me about appearance or whatever, just so much less. And I do think a part of it is like, gosh, like there's so many other things I care about that I don't have the energy for this, or I don't want to devote my energy to this. And so I've often wondered like, is this an age thing or what is this? But I feel very grateful for it. But what I found as a big part of that process is I've needed to get really clear with myself on what matters more. So, for example, a couple of weeks ago, I got sick, and I love exercise. I really do. I feel like it just clicks for me between sleep and energy. It really feels vital to me. It has nothing to do with weight or body, and I do all different types of things. But I basically was sick, and I was like, I need to take a break from working out. It's not good for my body right now. And then that dovetailed into some travel and being busy with some work. And then it's like, oh, now we're coming up on a couple weeks. And it's just like that working walk was all I was able to fit in. And it's hard not to feel like that's not enough because it's not what I'm used to doing. But I'm not going to let that downward spiral. Like I can see it. Okay, you're not happy right now. Something's bothering you. You're not happy right now. It's because you're not moving your body like you want to, because this is something that is part of your nourishment and part of your well-being. So that all makes sense. So this dissatisfaction, is not going to be about anything except for it's almost like this vitamin that you're missing, and we need to figure out how we're going to get back on the track that is better for you. But I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, well, all you did was a walk and you suck, you suck, you suck. Like, I've kind of pushed aside that inner critic as much as I can. And when I feel this negativity, turning it into, it just means something you care about is at stake. So what is it? And use energy to getting back more in line what body kindness looks like to you. So it could be anything from something like that to, like, I love healthful eating, don't get me wrong, and the veggies and fruits and all that stuff. But it's like, when I want a burger, I'm going to have a burger. And when I want regular pasta with gluten and all that stuff, I don't have the allergy.
Gluten.
Yes. Double gluten. Give me the donuts.
Give me all the gluten.
Yeah, I know. So I don't know. And it really does feel free. I've been off of dieting long enough and an intuitive eater long enough where I really feel like the far ends of intuitive eating, and it feels like freedom. And that might not be every listener right now or whatever. But yeah, it's just almost like, I guess, a really high level of self-acceptance. And I think it's because if I spent too much time in the inner critic zone, I would be miserable, and I want to be a happy person. So I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, kind of boiling that down to basically having a really strong self-compassion, mindfulness muscle to be at that point where you can hear negative self-talk and sit with it for a minute before like letting it spiral down and get, and ruminate and kind of just being with yourself in the moment, regardless of what's coming up, and accepting like that is what's happening right now, that is what is going on in your brain, and to be able to sit with it long enough to understand it a little bit, or to be able to kind of talk yourself through it. To me, like that's like the ultimate, what I love. That's like my ultimate goal when I'm working with clients, is to be able to see them start doing that on their own, because to me, that's like, that is sustainable body kindness, like for you. And, as part of my treatment in my postpartum depression and anxiety journey, I took an MBSR class, and it was all about that. And I will say I took it much earlier in the process than I should have. It was a little too much awareness in that moment, but I handled it. But it was so interesting to go through a mindfulness-based stress reduction class, is what that stands for, and to do like long meditations, and to really just like kind of observe your thoughts and not try to get rid of any of them, and just to like watch your brain go and just accept that is what's going on in your brain, and then make a decision on how you're going to respond, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
So I think, you explained that really well. And I think that is the message too, that we're giving to clients, is like, hey, again, like this doesn't mean we never have like negative self-talk or, body image challenges or things like that. It's, we just really try our best, at least, to get to a point where we can care for ourselves in those moments, just like we would care for ourselves when we're experiencing something that's more pleasant and easy to deal with.
Let me ask you a question. Do you have an easy time convincing people that like the healing powers of mindfulness, or do you feel like it's always like a tough sell? Like people look at you like you're absolutely nuts.
I don't really, in mindfulness in general, I don't really sell it. I totally get the like, I also don't sell it as like, oh, this is gonna, like, it certainly didn't, take care of my postpartum depression. There are instances, there is evidence to support that, but I don't really sell it. It just kind of is. And I think the way I work it into my sessions is just a little more organically, of like constantly asking questions that lend itself to that. Like, oh, how did that feel in your body? How did that feel in your thoughts? How did that feel in your emotions? How does that affect your eating? Kind of a thing. And like continue every time they like distract to something that was not in that moment that we're talking about, like bringing it back to that over and over again. Getting people to like, do you mean actually like meditate, or do you mean like mindful eating?
I was thinking of MBSR or just in like I can do stuff with clients in a session where we'll do some deep breathing or color breathing. And in fact, that's one of the things I'm consistent with, is we start our sessions with like a minute of some sort of mindfulness centering activity. And it can be like total silence, but I'm going to sit here and close my eyes for a minute, and because you need a minute to just kind of decompress. Or we can read a positive quote and talk about it. We could do some color breathing. But when my clients who could be helped the most with mindfulness, they're the ones who are rejecting it the most. And I always feel like, God, I wish you would just try it because wait till you see how amazing it can be.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I think it can have really amazing outcomes, but it is scary at first. Like if you're, I had not, so it turns out now I know in my history, I have had bouts of depression, but never in the context of me being aware of it. And so when I first reached out to get help, I told the therapist I called, like, hey, I think I need to just talk about motherhood and get some career counseling. I was in total denial, but I just knew something was up, And so when I go in and she's like, yeah, you have depression. I was looking behind me, who are you talking to? No, that's not what's going on. And she happened to be the first therapist I worked with a mindfulness, that was her main modality of therapy. And so it was scary to do those sits, and hear the thoughts that were in my head, because I am I think of myself as a very happy person and other people think of me as the happy person. And that was really so painful to sit through that. But, luckily it was in the context of an MBSR class and seeing the therapist, and eventually transitioned to a postpartum specialist, which was the most helpful part of my personal treatment. But I understand the resistance. For me, I could still do it, but I can see how some of my clients who have really high anxiety and their thoughts are racing, I could only imagine. I feel like for me, I experienced a fraction of what my clients go through on a day-to-day basis from just per report. And so I can see that, I can see why there is that resistance there. And I think diving into it in the setting of MBSR can be a really great introduction, because it really goes through what actually is this whole meditation thing, and what's the intention and what is not the intention. It just kind of gives you a good background and stuff. So I would highly recommend that. Anyone can take it. You don't have to be diagnosed with anything, to take it.
Yeah. Cool. Well, It was really fun talking with you today. I want to make sure you have a chance to let everyone know where they can find you and get involved in Nurtured Mama and all that good stuff. So what do you want to share there?
Sure. So any mamas out there who, want some mom-focused body positivity community, we have the Nurtured Mama community. So if you go on Facebook, you can just search the Nurtured Mama community. It's a closed Facebook group, so just request to join, super easy. You can also go to the nurturedmama.club. So the nurturedmama.club to learn more about the group, learn about different services that we're offering, and you can join through there too. It's a really obvious link. And then I just launched a cool free intentional eating awareness, basically 5 audios, 5 days to eating more intentionally. So there's 5 audio recordings with some mindfulness work in there and 6 handouts to accompany it. So you can access that on that website or mynutritioninstincts.com website as well.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And I hope all the listeners check it out and enjoy being helped by you.
And that's a wrap on today's show. Let's continue the conversation on Facebook. Just search Body Kindness Podcast and click to join. And if you can contribute to the production costs for the 2018 podcast season, visit gofundme.com/bodykindness. We love ratings and reviews. Please do that. And don't forget to let your friends know that Body Kindness is one of your can't miss podcasts. If you have questions, comments, or guest recommendations, shoot me an email, Rebecca@bodykindnessbook.com.